Hello, everybody. I know you're probably in different parts of the world, so this has been recorded previously. So let me just say good morning, good evening, good night, whatever it's for you. My name is Rodrigo Jordan. I'm from Chile. I'm a board member of the Chilean Foundation for the Alleviation of Poverty, where I was chairman for about 10 years. And I've been working in it for about 20 years. Um, just want to briefly speak to you about our challenges in confronting poverty here in Chile for the last and how it change our perspective. Um, just want to share my screen very quickly to just show you how not only change our perspective, but also was a personal change in the way we conceive poverty. Just let me start by saying that we been confronting severe droughts in Chile for the last 12 years. We have social unrest. I don't know if you heard or you've seen in the news, but since 2019, the inequality in Chile has become a public affair in terms of demonstrations in the streets, strikes, and everything. So we were in just about that process, which ended up in this writing of a new constitution. We will just start doing that right now. Of course, we confronted health issues with COVID-19 that developed into a humanitarian crisis because, for example, 15% of people in Chile are unemployed, so less income in the families, and so that increases the poverty levels in Chile. That means, of course, an economic crisis. 6%, maybe 8% of our gross national product declined in the last year. This year will be similar. We're confronting very, very high levels of COVID-19 right now in Chile. That also is part of a political crisis in which, political parties and the government has only about 3 or 4% of support, no matter where you stand in the line between right and left or whatever. Political parties are extremely avoided in Chile in terms of acceptance. And of course, an ecological crisis, which is severe throughout the world, but also present in Chile. I don't want to describe each crisis in Chile, but all of these crises reflect upon a term that we've been using, taken from a professor from Harvard called Ronald Heifetz, that the 21st century is an immense adaptive challenge. An adaptive challenges are recognized because nobody knows the exact way to confront them. You can ask anybody, nobody knows. And that's the main characteristic of an adaptive challenge. Somebody said this in a much better way. The important problems we confront cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we had when we created them. None else than Albert Einstein said this. And that is applied in Chile to the way we've seen poverty and how we changed our conception of poverty. This is how the poverty has declined in Chile over the last 10 years. Sorry to go only to the 2017. We have a measurement, an economic measurement every 2 years, but 2019 was in the middle of this social unrest, so it didn't work. So we're going to have one at the end of this year, 2021. So data only stands until 2017. But you can see how pretty successful we have been in reducing poverty. However, this poverty is measured by income. And so the way we measured poverty in Chile is if the families have an enough income to buy a certain basic needs basket. And that's it. It has nothing to do with any other dimensions of poverty. These are the percentages. 2.3% in 2017 here of extreme poverty represents about 500,000 people who live in extreme poverty. So there's lots of things to do, yet the problem hasn't been sorted out. But this made us quite happy as a country that we were diminishing poverty. However, inequality in Chile is pretty big. This is the mean monetary income per capita ordered by income deciles. And so you have this first decile who have very little income, and of course the 10th decile have very high income. and that's the average mean in the country. Sorry, that's in English. It's about 1 million pesos. And so we have at least half of the population, or 60% of the population, with very low income and this very high inequality, which is something we hadn't yet sorted out. However, that way of measuring poverty didn't reflect something that we called the poverty sort of elevator, in which people come in and out of poverty depending in their situation. And this is a panel poll made in the years 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2009. Afterwards, they were stopped doing it. Data was not provided with the government because it showed that in any of those years, families would come in and out of poverty. So you take a picture of a family and it's within poverty next year because, they got an income working for somebody, they are out of poverty, but then they lose that job and they're poverty again in the next year. Or they have, as we did now, a health issue and somebody just today contracted COVID, and so he couldn't work anymore, and so that promoted them down the poverty line. If you do that, in between all those years, 36% of persons were poor at least one period of time during those years, and that's totally different number from the 8.6%, because families feel themselves as being poor. Although measurement might say they're not, they feel themselves as they are. And this is a much more impressive number. Because of this, data of panel polls were stopped. And so we don't have any more data about this. We want to arrange that, but that's been impossible, no matter what the government. So these might have improved, but we're still talking about maybe 30, 32%. So that's 1/3 of the population being within the levels of poverty, no matter what line is that. But the income perspective, and this is where we change our views, hides other dimensions of poverty. Just let me show you one. This is the housing actions made by governments between 1980 and 2001 during a period of 21 years. And this is a map of Santiago, and you can see the black blocks are where the housing, solutions were given for the very poor families. And that meant that they were in the sort of the periphery of the city where those were done, right? So that is something of a problem because, you build them proper houses, but not necessarily proper habitats, proper neighborhoods. And that meant that in 2003, for example, this is family reports of in-house family violence made in the police stations. And again, if you superimpose those two graphs, you have this, which is quite amazing. We provided a housing solution. We provided with a house, but not with, as I say, proper environments for development. Not only that, they were in the fringes of the city, so they were very far away from the center of the city where the main jobs are. And you can see again the blocks of those black housing solutions very far away from the center of the city. And we do have not a very good public transportation service. So that means people from these poor neighborhoods will use probably anything between 2 and 3 hours a day to move from their housing to their work and back. So that it starts confronting a reality of poverty, which is much more complex than just the incomes. This is a Google photograph of high-end neighborhood in Santiago, with green all over the place and swimming pools. And of course, a low-end neighborhood, which just was a housing solution, but no public services, no parks, no community services for them. And so all of that started building a sequence that we wanted to change, and we promoted a new measuring of poverty, which was called a multidimensional poverty measure. This was based on works done in the University of Oxford. And so we added new dimensions and convinced the government from our foundation to add new dimensions. I'm sorry this is in Spanish, but I will immediately translate them. Those dimensions have with three issues concerning education. The second pillar is health. The third pillar is work and social security. The fourth pillar is housing and environment. And the fifth pillar is networks and social cohesion. They were incorporated, the blue ones in 2015, the red ones in 2017. And when you do that, when you conceive poverty, not just as a matter of income, but as a multidimensional conception, you get a difference. This was the paragraph, the graph I was showing you on how we diminished poverty over the years. But this one is when you include multidimensional poverty. And that is, as you see, not such good news. In 2015 and 2017, with the 5 dimensions incorporated, you had 20.9, 20.7% of poverty. And probably that would be increased now that we had these COVID-19 issues when it's measured in 2021. So if you start understanding poverty in a different way, you start getting different images and different results. Not only that, if in between regions, and just let me show you, this is the second regions. These are sort of states, if you want to mention within Chile. This second state here, if you measure it by income, poverty was 6.4, but if you measure it by multidimensional, it was 24.9. So if you are just committed to income, you have a different picture of how poverty is in reality in the rest of the country. And it's just showing you the case for this second region, but also you can look at the whole of the country. So again, the way you conceive poverty helps bring you a different picture of how it is. And so we come to the main conclusions of this short speech. Somebody said, remember the faces of the most poor and weak persons that you have seen, and ask yourselves if the action you are considering taking will be somehow useful to them. Would it give them back the control over their own lives? Who said this? None else than Mahatma Gandhi. And that's very important because you can confront poverty by providing money allowances to increase the income of the family, but you're not necessarily solving poverty if you consider these other dimensions. And that's so one thing important. But the other thing important is that this was a book written by C.K. Prahalad out from Harvard as well, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. I recommend you guys read it. But in the initial pages, he says this: if we stop thinking of the poor as victims or as a burden and start recognizing them as resilient and creative entrepreneurs and value-conscious consumers, a whole new world of opportunity can open up. And this means that the change is not in the way we do things, is in the way we conceive things. So what we now structure in the Foundation for the Alleviation of Poverty in Chile is that poor people have very significant assets. They know how to confront poverty. And if we conceive them as part of our most important world resource, our human capital, then a new perspective can show up. If you think that, again, 20% of people in Chile are within poverty, if you take them by multidimensional poverty, you are losing 20% of human capital that could contribute to the development of Chile. So what we're proposing now in Chile is a personal transformational process. And we discussed this with, companies, private companies who are asking us how can they do to help alleviate poverty. And we say, look, you as companies, as wealth people, owners of wealth and well-being people, you always are confronting actions. What can we do in order to obtain some results in terms of the alleviation of poverty? And of course, there's different actions that have different results, and that is first order learning. What we're proposing is you as an observer are subject to change. So you move your perspective behind you and show you can be a subject of change. And that means a second order learning. I conceive poverty in a different way. And that's what we did. Rather than saying, poverty is something we need, it's a burden, that is something that we need to address. Let's think of poverty representing an absurd loss of talents, of innovation capacity, of creativity, and entrepreneurship. It's a tremendous loss that can contribute to Chile's development. In that way, if we think of that, there's two things that we need to take into consideration. First, it's be very vigilant of our unconscious arrogance. We people that we're well off, that we don't have poverty issues, that we have a proper income, and we're not rich, but we certainly are not poor as well. Maybe sometimes, and this is a very unconscious issue, we throw our arrogance to the poor people, and we go to a community, to a fishery just by the seaside, or a agricultural community down in the south of Chile, and we think that because we have had education that we know what it needs to be done. And that is quite arrogant, maybe unconscious, maybe you're trying to do the best, but you need to be very vigilant of what you know. If you're going to work with poor people, you need to recognize that they have knowledge, that they have assets, and you are maybe not equal, but in the same time, you're symmetrical in terms of what your value is in terms of their approach to the alleviation of poverty. So be very vigilant of a conscious arrogance. Rather, be more accustomed to work as a conscious humility. You need to be humble. You need to be willing to hear, don't come with preconceived solutions. Just sit there. What I'm telling the corporate assistants within the companies, that you don't need to do anything right now. Just go into the poor sectors of the population, just sit there, open your ears, open your eyes, open your nose, and smell, hear, and look at what is going on there. And just be open, very mindfully open, very humble, very conscious humility in that perspective, in order to identify what is needed to do that, and work with the poor people within those neighborhoods, within those communities, to confront the solution. Just to end, then, just let me share you a thought of my grandfather, who has taught my way through the alleviation of poverty, or working in our foundation for the alleviation of poverty. Eagerness to possess, where much is always too little, darkens the thoughts and dries our soul. So that is my short presentation. I wish you all the very best. I wish you it was useful. Thank you very much. See you somewhere around.